Thank you. So do I just... Thank you so much. I'm tremendously honored to be here. Yeah, sure, thank you. Is it just water?
Yes, just water.
Is it traditional for me to sit this way? Is it okay if I stand?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I can see everyone. Hello, everyone. Yeah, truly honored to be here tonight. I honestly did not know what I was going to talk about. I'm still not entirely sure. But what I thought I might do is just tell you a little bit about myself and how I got into music. And then we'll see where we're at. I've brought a presentation I can show the virtual choirs, this project that I've been working on and how that came to be. And then I'm very much looking forward to the questions and any of your questions. I'm happy to talk about anything from the business of music to how one creates music. Any question really. If I don't know the answer, I'll make something up. Throw a shoe when it gets boring, please. I was born in Nevada, which is on the west coast of the United States, right next to California. It's truly cowboy country. I owned cowboy boots all the way through high school until I was 18 years old. I graduated with a class of 90, so just a small, idyllic, rural setting. And it was in 1984 that I discovered pop music. It was a song by Bonnie Tyler called Total Eclipse of the Heart. None of you will remember this. Oh, you do remember it. And I had to learn how to play it on the keyboard, and so I taught it to myself on the piano, and somewhere along there I discovered synthesizers, and specifically Depeche Mode. And I wanted to be in Depeche Mode. I still want to be in Depeche Mode. And I had the hair, and I of all things, was cast in a nationwide McDonald's commercial from this tiny little town. I had a 3-second part. It's still on YouTube. But it ended up making me, at the time, $11,000, $12,000, which was a ton of money for a 14-year-old kid. And my parents made me put most of it away, but then let me spend $1,000 on whatever I wanted. And I bought my very first synthesizer and drum machine. And I spent my entire high school career in my room, either writing pop songs like Depeche Mode or Erasure or Duran Duran or the Pet Shop Boys, or using Aquanet and hairspray to make my hair look like the flock of seagulls. Any of these references landing? Probably not. Anyway, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a pop star. And when I finally graduated from high school, I went to the largest state school, which was the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. They do have a university. And really not knowing what I was going to do, I thought I would major in pop music, and I'd be Pop 101. And I went in to audition for a music scholarship, thinking it'd be an easy way to get some money. And there was a semicircle of teachers there. They asked me to play something from my repertoire. I didn't know what that word meant. So I said, well, really, I just play. At the time, I didn't read music. I was totally self-taught. I knew nothing about classical music even then. And I improvised something 80s. And they didn't give me a scholarship, but in the room was the choral director. And he said, why don't you come and sing for me? He was just, like all good choral directors, searching for anybody who can sing, a warm body. And I was warm. And so I went over to his room with him, and he said, I remember him giving me some sheet music, and he said, can you sing the bottom line here? And in my memory, it must have been a Bach chorale, and he must have just been handing it to me. And it was hieroglyphics to me. I had no idea what it meant. So he played me the part, and he said, can you sing it? And I listened to it, and I could sing it back. And he said, can you sing this? And he gave me something a little more difficult, and I could sing that. And then he played something quite difficult and said, can you sing that? And I did okay with it. And I realized in that moment, actually, I've been training myself for years now. I just didn't know the names for any of these things. And he said, listen, I think you've got a lot of enthusiasm, and you seem to have a knack for this. Why don't you come and join the choir? You can be a bass. And I said, fantastic, I'm in. And I left the room, and I said, no way am I joining choir. I had seen people in choir in high school, and no, thank you. I just was not going to be one of those guys. And about a week and a half later, a friend of mine who was in the choir came to me and said, listen, you've got to join. There are all these cute girls in the soprano section. And at the end of the year, we're taking this free trip to Mexico, all expenses paid. And so I thought for Mexico and cute sopranos, I could do just about anything. And on my first rehearsal, I came in and we started with warm-ups. How many choral singers are there in the room? Yes. So you've all been there, right? And we're doing back massages and this. And I've never been more embarrassed for humanity in all my life. I just couldn't believe that people would voluntarily do this in the middle of the day. And we finished, and the conductor, David Weiler was his name, he said, all right, let's take our seats and let's turn to the Kyrie. And I was raised a-religiously, not as an atheist, but really with no religion. My parents had taken me to church a couple of times just to sort of see what it was all about. But I didn't know what a Kyrie was. And sitting in the middle of the bass section, I sort of looked over my shoulder and, okay, we're at the Kyrie. And it turns out it was the Requiem by Mozart. And we start with the Kyrie, and I remember he brings his hands up, 30 basses around me, take that breath in, and then we launch, Kyrie. You've all sung it, right? The fugue. And at first, I remember I started to kind of tremble listening to this music, and then I started to giggle, which I always do when I hear music that moves me, even today, like just, oh my God, this kind of thing. And then I started tearing up, and I realized in that moment that I was hearing not music, but my name, my true name, not Eric Whitacre, but this name inside my body somewhere. And I remember like it was yesterday, this counterpoint around me, this like a cosmic Swiss watch, that all these parts fit together, and 110 people moving and breathing together. And I left that room, the world's biggest choir geek, totally transformed after 50 minutes. It was one of the great experiences of my life. I think in retrospect, what happened was that for the first time, I felt truly part of something larger than myself. And that powered me forward. I went to the library and started taking scores off the shelf and the matching CDs. I couldn't read it, but okay, who's this Mozart guy? And I would open up a piano concerto or a mass and listen and try to follow, okay, I see that. And then next to Mozart was some guy named Mahler, and he's like, oh my God. And the first 3 years of my 7-year undergraduate degree, every day was a revelation. It was just, I couldn't believe, my mind was exploded over and over and over. And then finally, at the age of 21, I decided I wanted to write my own piece, a work for choir, and give it as a gift to this man, David Weiler, who had completely changed my life. And there was this long tradition that he had started of performing a different musical setting of the poem Go Lovely Rose by the English poet Edmund Waller. And it's one of those typical choir setting pieces. It ends with how small a part of time they share that are so wondrous, sweet, and fair. And it's one of those ones where we all hold hands and cry at the end of every year, typical choir stuff. And so I did my very best with it. By then I was just starting to learn to read music, but I wrote everything by ear, wrote it out as best I could. I still didn't understand harmonic spelling really, but I had some friends help me with it. And we sang it through in rehearsal, and it sounded like music. And more than sounding like music, it sounded like me. It sounded like that name inside of me, outside my body, and in other people's bodies and voices and hearts. And that was it. I wanted to be a composer. I had the bug, and I wrote and wrote and wrote. By the time I finished that 7-year undergraduate degree, I thought, I can do this. I can be a composer, but I really need some genuine training now at this point. I was told by my teachers there and my advisors that my grades were so bad that there was no graduate school in the country that would accept me, and it was a good lesson for me to learn. So I looked to any place that would accept my application based on merit alone and not my grade point average. And the only place I could find was this school in New York called the Julliard School. So I applied and was accepted. And I studied there for 2 years, got my master's degree. I met some of my best friends in the world, one of them who is here tonight, Steve Bryant. Steve, will you wave? Steve's also a composer. We've known each other for 20 years now. I met my wife there. She was a soprano, a student at the same time. And since that time, I've been trying one way or another to make a living and continue what seems to me a magical and charmed life of writing music and conducting it for a living. I just keep waiting for someone to pinch me and wake me up. I'd be happy to talk about the virtual choir now, maybe play a little bit of music, and then we'll go on. Let me grab this real quick. So, have any of you sung in one of the virtual choirs? I love that. Which ones, guys? Four. 4 and 3. Where to start with this? So, as a composer, it's a very strange and lonely job. I think I'm generally more an extroverted personality. I love being around people. And you spend all of your time, frankly, sitting in your underwear, pulling your hair out, trying to put 2 notes together and thinking, you know, if I would have studied harder, I could have been an architect and had a real job. And the piece finally gets performed at the end, and that's always a big black tie affair, and it's quite splashy. And then it gets published, and then it goes out into the world like a child. You don't know what its effect is going to be. Some of the children are very successful. You know, they go on to be senators and business tycoons, and they send you back a check every month. I love those kids. Some of the kids, you know, no one wants to play with, and you know, just come to daddy, I love you. But somehow they go out, and it's only until very recently with social media that I've even known the kind of impact that the music is having on individual people. So 5 years ago, a friend of mine sent me a link to a YouTube video, and said, "You have got to see this." And it was this young woman named Britlin Losey, 17 years old, from Long Island, New York. And she was made a video singing the soprano line to a piece I'd written called Sleep. And she put it up on YouTube somehow hoping it would get to me, like this electronic message in a bottle, I suppose, out there. And it did find me. And this is part of Britlin's video.
Hi, Mr. Eric Whitacre. My name is Britlin Losey, and this is a video that I'd like to make for you. Here's me singing Sleep. I'm a little nervous, just so you know.
So I thought Britlin was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. You know, her voice is so pure, and it's such an intimate setting. You can see the teddy bear on the piano back there, you know, and she's just wide open. She's completely vulnerable. And I was thunderstruck by this idea that if I could get 25 people to do what Britlin was doing, right? If they just sang their part soprano, alto, tenor, or bass, as long as they were singing at the same tempo and they were singing in the same key, then they would just upload all their videos from wherever they were in the world, and we would just have to start them all at the same time, and it would make a choir. Right? Pretty simple idea, virtual choir. And so my first challenge was, how do you get everybody to sing at the same tempo? So I uploaded this video with the sheet music to Luxarumque, Light and Gold, another piece that I'd written for free download on my website. You'll notice there's no sound at all to this, right? Because there's no singers. I'm just imagining the music in my head and then conducting it. I can tell you this was an incredibly weird and awkward day in the studio. They thought I was insane. But I put this up, people started to download the sheet music, and then suddenly people were uploading their videos. This is Cheryl Ang from Singapore. This is Evangelina Etienne from Massachusetts. Stephen Hansen from Sweden. And Jamal Walker from Texas. There's even this very short soprano. Have any of you sung Luxarumque? Oh, wow, very cool. So there's this short soprano solo at the beginning of it, and so we held auditions. Basically, 50 sopranos uploaded their video, and we chose one. We loved Melody Myers from Tennessee. Just effortless, right? I don't know if you can read the top comment from there, but it says, "You melt my face off." Indeed. And so all told, we had 185 videos from 12 different countries come in. And I'm left with all these assets. I know nothing about video editing or how to put any of this together. And this young man named Scott Haynes, who at the time was just 21 years old, wrote me an email and said, "This is the project I've been looking for my whole life." I wrote him back and said, "Thank God you found us, Scott." Scott spent like 3 months not only aggregating and unifying all the videos and getting them all to line up at the same time, but also cleaning the audio, which is a big part of the virtual choir experience. You can hear some of them have that computer hiss in the background. That's actually relatively easy to get rid of. You can EQ and compress that out. But some of the videos, you can hear crickets or ambulances. We had one video where you can hear somebody's mother yelling at him in the background, you know, "What are you doing in there?" So all of that has to get edited out. And when it was finally finished, we took the completed video, uploaded it to YouTube. Here's the first part of Virtual Choir 1.0, Lux Arumque. And forgive me, I'll stop it there. And the video went viral. And 5 years ago, a video going viral was a really big deal. We suddenly had several million views, and better than that, we had singers from all over the world writing us and saying, "We want to be a part of this. When's Virtual Choir 2.0? What's going to happen?" So we launched Virtual Choir 2.0 the following year. 2,052 singers from 58 countries. Sorry, I'll stop it there now. This time, some extraordinary things happened. We had singers from Iraq, Iran, Lebanon, Syria, Israel, Palestine, Jordan, Egypt, 7 countries from the African continent. We had singers from as far north as the Great Alaskan Bush and as far south as New Zealand. It was suddenly becoming this global choir. So we launched Virtual Choir 3.0. (3,746 singers from 73 countries. We started setting up a Facebook page and a Twitter account so that people could send us their experiences, what it was like to be in the virtual choir. And so many incredible stories. There was a man who had sung in choirs for most of his young adult life and then had gone legally blind and was unable to see the conductor until now, 30 years later, he was able to get close enough to the monitor to see my little conductor video to join the choir. There was a young woman who had sung for most of her life with her mother, and her mother was dying in hospice, and so as a tribute to her, she recorded her virtual choir video holding her mother's hand just off screen. It still chokes me up. There was a young man from Cuba who desperately wanted to join, but because of government regulations was unable to send his 24 meg video file over email. So we talked him through how to break it up into 24 1 meg files, send it to us, and then we stitched it all back together. Cuba was represented. Just this past year, we opened the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow with our first virtual youth choir in partnership with UNICEF. Children from 80 different countries sang. I don't know if that's a 100-meter screen there across, and I don't know if you could see, but I was up there conducting a live choir with the virtual choir. I'm quite certain that is as close as I will ever come to actually being in Depeche Mode. It was a great night, and the kids were so cute. There were children as young as 2, 3, and 4 years old who uploaded their videos. Just the sweetest thing you've ever seen. I guess to finish with this, I believe that you can tell a people's highest aspiration by their architecture, and specifically the tallest building in their villages, their towns, their hamlets, their cities. For most of human history, the tallest buildings have been religious. The pyramids at Giza, the Acropolis in Athens, minarets throughout the Islamic world, here in Europe, and in England and Europe, cathedrals, churches. It's only in the 20th century that we see, for the first time, a real shift in that paradigm, and the tallest buildings became buildings of industry and government and corporate law. Finally, in the 21st century, we find ourselves the tallest building in the world, the Burj Dubai, a monument to nothing but opulence. My hope and my belief is that the next great architectural movement will be virtual, that it won't be physical bricks, but it will be code. These vast, glittering cities built of computer code that connect us in a way that really nothing we've ever seen will before. Post-national, post-racial, post-religious, and will give everyone a chance to be part of something larger than themselves. Happy to take your questions now, I suppose. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So I'll start with a few questions and then go on for, I'm sure, some much more interesting ones from the audience. So firstly, what's the most difficult part of the composing process for you?
So not to be maudlin about it, but the whole damn thing. It always starts with such optimism. You know, I have an idea for a piece, just a general concept, and I'm so excited. This is the way forward. This is how I'm going to transform myself as a composer and as a human being. I've got a decent musical idea. And then it goes into just this spiral of detail. I get overcome by the tyranny of detail. And usually it gets just worse and worse and worse until the deadline looms and approaches. I have a couple all-nighters. I send it off in a caffeine-fueled rage.
Sounds a lot like how students do their essays.
Yeah, right. It's what you're experiencing this week, probably.
So do you find that you compose better sort of in a shorter time period?
For me, unfortunately, and I hate to say this because I wish it weren't true, but I will use exactly the number of hours given to me. If I have a year until the piece is due, it will take me exactly a year to write it. If it has to be done tomorrow, it gets done by tomorrow. And
which part do you find most rewarding about the process?
By far the most rewarding part is once it's finished and it's out in the world. And I can look back now at some of the pieces even that we're hearing now. Luke's Rumque, for instance, is 15 years old this year. And I'm so grateful that it exists, that it's given me this vehicle to interact with the world and be it's out there living its own life, you know, and it's this, I remember it being a struggle to write it, but now I'm just so grateful that it exists.
And you've known sort of a number of your pieces have been composed sort of in homage to sort of poetry, including Cummings and Frost. What is it about these poets that inspires you to compose?
Well, for me, when I'm setting poetry, I'm looking for, how to say it, well, I'll alliterate. I'm looking for a poem that is pregnant with possibility. And what that means is that, for me, the best poems are filled with music. Usually, on first reading, I can not hear the music, but hear the potential for music in there. And then, really, my job at that point is less about writing music and more about dusting off the words and just extracting the music that already exists in there. I feel like my very most successful pieces musically are the ones where I was able to just quiet myself enough to hear what the poet was asking me to do and then do that.
And why do you think that music is so powerful, engaging human emotions? Bit of a broad question.
Well, I have no, well, yes, I have some doubt. I don't know is the big, I suspect that it's first and foremost physiological. There must be something. I know for me there are times in music when I feel frisson or, you know, just this sensation of adrenaline rushing up and down my body. I'm quite certain it has to do with combinations of chords and notes that either sound or hint at very basic human experiences. Love, lust, tragedy, sorrow, joy. It's the sounds that we make as human beings. Somehow the music is echoing or replicating that. I also think there's a big sociological component. I know now, like, nothing moves me more than, say, for you musician nerds, like 1, 4, 1, that change, which it's basically just a big U2 song. You know, it's what pop music is, or even better, you know, if you do 1, 6, 4, 5, that kind of thing. Yeah, and that I'm certain is because most of the music that I listened to when I was a teenager was written with that chord change. Anyway.
And one final question from me before we open it out to the audience. What do you think is the biggest challenge facing the music industry at the moment?
The music industry?
Yeah.
This is being recorded, right? I would say the biggest challenge facing the music industry right now are the record companies. They're in the way. They're old and they don't get it, and the entire structure of the business has changed overnight. It's not at all what it used to be. They're holding on desperately in order to make the kind of money they used to. But even the idea, the concept of copyright is dying so fast. I for one, am very happy about that. I just get a little frustrated when I see the large corporations holding back progress.
Thank you. I'd like to open it out to the audience. Yeah, just on the front here.
Should I stand? Or?
I mean, whichever you
Okay.
prefer.
Thanks a lot for a very engaging talk. You were talking about how you first experienced that there was this name inside you that were more than your given name. And I can't help but think that there's also, you have this very distinctive, airy sound that sort of follows through all of your pieces as I see it. So how did that develop? Like, was it literally just this, wow, this is just it, this is my sound, or did it come through certain experiences or influences?
So that sound, that thing, I guess, that is my signature, and you called it light and airy, and usually it's clustery, I suppose, is my thing. I didn't mean to be the cluster guy, by the way. I didn't set out to do it. It was what happened was very early on, as I was singing in choirs, I would find that anytime I was singing in a major second or a minor second near someone, and singers know exactly what I'm talking about, right? That's that physiological thing. I could feel it in my body. It was just, and when it's really in tune, it's the image I get in my mind is of, you know, when you scratch a dog and it starts doing this, you know, it's like it's just, oh my God. And so then I started realizing that if you took that in a tonal context, for me, it's very important that it be in a tonal context, that you started layering those chords, those notes in just the right combination, that you could create first this, which was happening here in the body, but then that light and airy bit that you're talking about, which to me is producing this, there's this cloud of overtones that's produced, that's incredibly complex. And I'm not a religious person, but if I were, I would say God lives in that cloud up there. To me, that's the secret of the universe. It's up in there. So it's very much a spiritual, almost religious experience for me, finding those chords. The second thing I would say about those things specifically is that for me, the chords themselves, they match, when I get them right, they match identically the emotion that I'm feeling. And it's never just a specific on-the-nose emotion. It's quite sophisticated in a way. Like there's a chord from a piece I wrote called "A Boy and a Girl," that's this 8-part cluster chord. But to me, it sounds like melancholy and a little bit of hope. There's kind of an optimistic overtone to it, but also it's a little sorrowful and wistful, all in the same chord. And it somehow, there's no distance between the way I feel and the notes on the page. It's just, it is. And that's really what I'm aspiring to do when I'm writing those pieces, is just the smallest distance between what is here and then what is on the page. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Great.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Just on the front here, Isaac.
Yeah, this is not my personal point of view, but a lot of people have sort of criticized and denounced your music as being quite trashy.
Denounced?
Yeah.
As trashy.
And because, like, this is not my personal point of view, and they sort of said that the whole clustery thing, you can do it to a certain number of pieces, but there's a time when one must change, so to speak.
It's become a gimmick or something, yeah.
Where do you how do you respond to that, sort of the criticism, and where do you see sort of your music developing in the future?
Well, it's really interesting because regardless of what people say, that's going to happen. It's part of that is simply it's the joy and wonder of gaining some popularity. You grow a big old target, so I'm fine with that. But the core of the argument about the chords being used over and over again. Well, first of all, in all of my music, if I found the chord that expresses, say, snow or some natural phenomenon, rain in cloudburst, if I found that chord, then from here on out, when I'm writing about rain, I'm just going to go back and quote myself. I've already brought the fire from the mountain. It's almost like I'm developing my own semiotic language, this musical language that is very specific to me. So that perhaps people hear, oh, there's that stupid chord again. But for me, it has deep personal meaning. It's connecting all these pieces together over large tranches of time in my life. So it's personal, and I'm okay if they don't like it. But then the second part, which is interesting, is that there does seem to be this desire for artists, from the public, for artists to grow, to shake off their shackles and find something new. Stravinsky, I think, was in some ways a prisoner of this idea. At 28, 29, he wrote Firebird and Rite of Spring, and then that wasn't enough, so he got to throw that away, and then he wrote Song of Songs, and they did this unbelievably new language, and that wasn't enough, so by the 60s he was writing dense, difficult 12-tone music. I don't want to do that for the sake of changing. I'm not going to do it just because, well, I need to be new. I want to only write things that are true. That's what I'm trying to do. True to me, true to my emotional core. That being said, what I'm finding now at 45 years old, which is where I find myself with a nearly 10-year-old son, and having lived for 5 years now in London and spent time at Cambridge, and now getting ready to move back to Los Angeles, I'm ready to grow as a person. I feel this new transition coming. And what I'm hoping will happen is that will be reflected in the music. So that it'll continue to be true, but then it will just sound different as I evolve as a human. That's what I'm hoping happens. We'll see. I may just keep using the same 4 chords over and over, though.
Thank you. Yeah, the lady just...
I'm from Lawrence, Kansas, and I had the privilege
Wait, you're from Lawrence?
I'm from Lawrence, Kansas, in the United States, and I had the privilege of singing with my all-women's choir under Hillary Morton, She Weeps Over a Hoon, and kind of based on that choral piece. I was wondering what draws you to such lyrics and poets like James Joyce to compose around their specific poetry, and if there's something that draws you to certain writers that inspire you.
So first, Hillary's the best, isn't she? Yeah, she's amazing. It's the choral director from Lawrence, Kansas, and a good friend. So James Joyce in particular, it's exactly what I was talking about before. His in Hebrew, I'm not sure if it's this way in the 12th or 13th century, if you're speaking English or Old English or even in German. I don't know if the word is the same, but in Hebrew, the word for poem and the word for song are the same word. It used to be the same thing, shir. And so with James Joyce, to me, even reading it off the page, you can hear the music in the line. It doesn't take a lot of smarts to set James Joyce to, do you know what I mean? Dylan Thomas is the same way, by the way. It's just vibrating with its own musical language. In that case, that was a piece that I think it was maybe the third or fourth piece that I wrote. I was literally starving as a college student. I had no money at all, no food. And the choral conductor, who was an early champion of my music, this woman named Jocelyn Jensen in Las Vegas, commissioned me out of her own pocket to write a piece for her women's choir, basically to give me money to eat. And so I didn't know what to write for women. I had been reading those James Joyce poems, the poems penny each. And I thought, oh, I know exactly what I'll write for it. It wrote itself pretty quickly. And a funny anecdote about that one, I improvised at the piano. I didn't finish in time, so I gave them their choral parts, but then improvised the piano part during performance. And then had to go back and transcribe from the recording what I had played, and that's what's published. Genius.
Just there, Isaac. Yeah.
Thank you, Eric. You're right that the industry has completely changed very quickly. Have you got any advice for young classical composers now who are starting out around the age that you started? Have you got any ideas for where they can take music they've written, what they can do with it?
I do. So, funnily enough, until the past 3 weeks, my advice for the last several years would have been, you have to start by getting a Twitter account, a YouTube account, a Facebook account. You got to do Snapchat, probably WhatsApp. It's all about social media and building a fan base, one virtual person at a time. This would have been my advice. I got incredibly burnout. No, this wasn't even burnout. I sort of lost myself this past year trying to write this big orchestra and chorus piece and also just live my life. I was going in a million directions conducting and traveling and writing, and I got lost. And so 3 weeks ago, when I finished the premiere of this big piece, I really went on a social media hiatus. I said, I'm just not going to do it for a while. I just need a break. I was sort of sick with it. And now it's been about 3 weeks since I've been engaged like I used to be, and I'm starting to actually suspect it was the social media that was really messing me up. I don't know why. I'm sure there's a sociological component to it. I'm sure there's studies being done right now, and they'll be all very obvious. 20 years from now, everybody will look back and say, what happened to that generation? But I'm somehow trying to hold all that in my head, this sense of expectation and connection and leadership. I lost my way. I really lost my way from what is right in front of me, what is now. So my advice now would be this, two things. One, you still have to hustle the old-fashioned way, which means you've got to get a score and a recording, and you've got to send it to every conductor you can think of. 1 in 100 conductors are actually going to look at it and perform it. Same thing with competitions. Enter every one. I've entered over 100 competitions in my lifetime. I've never won a single thing. But it doesn't matter. It forces you to finish the piece, and it gets it out there. You never know who might hear it. And I think of it as fishing, that you're just throwing lines out into the water, and one bites. And if it doesn't bite, it's not your fault, it's the fish's fault, right? You're just fishing. So hustle, hustle, hustle in the old-fashioned way. But bigger than that, I would say focus on the music. If the music is good, and by good I mean it's coherent and uses a small amount of musical material to make a huge emotional impact, and is true to your voice, it will find its way. It'll just rise just like this up to the top, and then you can sort of grab onto that thing and ride it to the next piece, and the next piece, and the next piece. That would be my advice. Good luck.
Isaac, just at the back, on the right there, yeah.
Talking of social media, we all enjoyed all your different profile pictures, by the way.
Thank you.
You were talking about the next phase of your music, and I know that Deep Field was obviously inspired by your look at the universe in general. Have you thought about going more introspectively and looking at the human mind as a source of inspiration? Because that's just as infinite.
That's interesting. So, and when you say the human mind, you mean the biology of the human mind, the physiology, or the
Hey,
the
where's the division? I'm a psychologist. It could be both.
Yeah. You know, yes, it's a brilliant idea. I guess I can say this in school. I've got this idea for a piece. There's this video on YouTube. Maybe some of you have seen it. It's a 1950s housewife. It's in black and white, but very clear, pristine black and white. And she's sitting with a scientist who has handed her a glass of water with a dose of LSD in it. Has anybody seen this video? If you're interested, so she drinks it, and then they document with him sitting there at the table, what's happening to you right now as you do this? Now, I've never done LSD, but watching it, it's the most transcendent experience that she's having. And there's this beautiful moment where she says to him, he says something like, are you having a good experience, something like this? And she says, well, I would be if you weren't here. And then she stops for a minute. She's looking and she says, no, actually, you don't matter at all. You're not here. It's moving through me. And no, there's no me. And you can see in that moment, whatever's happening to her, she's reached nirvana. She has transcended herself. The ego is gone. She's one with everything around her. It's so beautiful. And so I thought it would make a perfect piece for orchestra and soprano, setting her words as she's going through this experience. Now, then my very next thought is, well, I should probably do acid so I know what it's like, right? Where I'm going with this is I may need to call you soon, and you may have to talk me down from something as a psychologist.
That's cool, but I'm a mezzo, so you're going to have to pitch it down a bit.
Excellent.
Yeah, do you want to go just next to Isaac there, yeah?
This is kind of a side question, but your relationship with your wife, is it monogamous? Just wondering. Okay. My real question.
Do you know something I don't know? Is she...
My real question.
That was nice.
Is so with the Seal Lullaby, you were talking about maybe doing a piece of music for a film or for an animated film. Have you thought about doing something else like that to bring your music to a younger audience? But the first question still kind of stands if you want to talk to me afterwards.
That's the best. Okay, so when you say younger audience, you mean a younger non-classical audience? Is that what you mean? Yeah. So yes, absolutely. So you know real quickly what she's talking about. I wrote this piece called The Seal Lullaby. And it was, I took a meeting when I was living in Los Angeles with DreamWorks Animation. They wanted to perhaps set Rudyard Kipling's poem, The White Seal. They wanted to turn it into a movie. And so we had this nice conversation about it, and I went home and thought, okay, I'll write them this song as a spec song using Rudyard Kipling's poem that starts the story. It's just this sweet little poem about a baby seal that the mother seal is trying to put it to sleep. And so I set it in my best Disney kind of Stephen Schwartz sound. And I had my wife, with whom I share a monogamous relationship. I had her record it, and I played the piano, and then we sent it off to DreamWorks, and I waited a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I didn't hear anything. And finally, I just couldn't take it anymore. I called them up and I said, listen, do you not like it? I can write something else. I really would love to be part of this project. They said, oh no, everybody here loves it, but we've decided to make Kung Fu Panda. So I took that song that was supposed to be in some movie that never got made and turned it into a choral piece. That's where that came from. So I'm going to be writing another movie score in the fall with Hans Zimmer. We're going to work on a movie together, which I'm very, very excited about. And in addition to that, I'm desperate to work with some pop people and I've got this idea that I want to make an entire album, an a cappella album, where I feature, say, people like Jared Leto of 30 Seconds from Mars singing solo with my choir, in some, like the Ely Cathedral or something, and take these treatments and give some of those songs these really rich, beautiful choral treatments, and hopefully the youngs will like it.
Isaac, just on the right there. Yeah. Keep moving forward.
Hi, thank you for the talk. The first time I came across your music was when our school choir sung the Animal Crackers. And they've always puzzled me a little bit as to how unusual they sound. I was just wondering if you could talk about the process of creating them.
Did they get laughs when you performed them?
Oh, definitely the bovine one.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
So there are there's these hundreds of poems by the American poet Ogden Nash. He's famous for these miniatures, and they're all very clever, very funny. He's most famous for "Candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker." And so he wrote all these animal poems, and I thought it would be funny to take them and then set them in these kind of a pastiche of different styles, right? So the panther, the poem is "The panther is like a leopard, except it hasn't been peppered." It goes on like that. And so I set that sort of like Carmina Burana, and there's one that's like Mendelssohn, and there's another one that's like Beethoven and Tchaikovsky. Mostly, I wrote them because I was starting to do concerts entirely made up of my own music for the first time. And I realized there was just a lot of slow, introspective music. And for me, the best concerts, the programmed, they're built like a perfect dinner party. And you just don't serve meat and gravy for every course. You need some aperitifs, and then you need something light just to cleanse the palate. And so I wrote those as just a chance to give everybody something light, breathe, laugh, then we can descend back into the meringue.
We have time for just a couple more questions. See, just on the left there, Isaac. We'll pass it.
Hi, I was wondering what the process of composing with other people is like for you, and if it's different to you sat alone in your house composing by yourself.
Collaborating with someone it's something I haven't done a lot of, and I did for the first time with Hans Zimmer when we wrote the mermaid theme from Pirates of the Caribbean 4. This came out a couple of years ago. And basically, he called me in, they set up 2 pianos, they put microphones on it, and then there was a big bottle of rum between the two of us, pirates. He gave me a pirate name, which I can't repeat here. There's a lot of "arr," the pirate stuff, and we sort of played and we talked about things, and I was sharing with him classical pieces I loved that I thought might fit mermaids. I played a little La Mer, and then finally I settled on the minor ninth theme from Peter Grimes. I said, "Do you know Peter Grimes?" He said, "Oh yeah, I think I've seen it." And I said, "But there's this motive from it." And then I sort of played it, and then he kind of did his epic chord thing with it, and it was like, and we found this thing, and it was, the thing about it was, for the first time in years and years and years, it was genuinely fun. Like, I had a really good time. And it's something that I've learned a lot from Hans, is to keep light and have fun and enjoy it while it's happening. Be childlike about it. Keep that sense of innocence and playfulness. So I'd love to do more of it, if for nothing else, just to learn lessons about how other people find that fire.
Okay, just a gentleman in the front.
Hi.
Hey, man.
So I have 2 questions, if there's time for that. Firstly, I wanted to ask, the pop songs that you wrote in your youth, do you ever have you reused any of that material for any of your pieces nowadays? And the second question I had was that, so as has been touched on, most of your music is settings of various secular poems. And then there have been 1 or 2 pieces which have been sort of more religious. And I was wondering if there was anything that sort of sparked that in particular.
Yeah. So the pop songs there's one up on my SoundCloud page if you want to hear what it's it's terrible. So I haven't mined those for much musical material, although maybe I should go back. The setting of these religious texts, the first time I did it, well, let me step back for just a moment and say, I'm not a Christian. As I said before, I'm not an atheist. I'm skeptical, but I'm wide open as to how I feel. But for me, the poetry has to be true. It has to be something I believe. And so I've looked at all kinds of religious texts, say the Mass, for instance, and I find them beautiful and historically beautiful as well. I just don't find them to be true in my heart, so I just can't write music. Nothing comes out. But I had a friend who was a conductor who lost his son in a car accident, and I knew there was this long tradition of setting the text "When David heard that Absalom was slain." And the part of that text that I chose was purely humanistic. There's no religious element to it. It's simply a man who has lost his son wailing to God, this fist fight with God. And so that was the first time that I broke out of it, that I tried setting that. Then I came here to Cambridge, and for the very first time in my life, I sat in a choir, in a pew, or in the choir stalls, and sang a service. And I don't know if they do this here in Oxford, they must, but at Sydney, Sussex, where I'm at, every Wednesday is an all Latin evensong. The entire thing is Latin. And I was just transfixed by this. It really changed looking at it, and I saw for the first time this deep wisdom in the Christian liturgy that my whole idealistic dogma-fearing brain had rejected on whole. I'd thrown out the baby with the bathwater. And so I started finding these other things. Could I find Dominus Deus? Is there, what kind of meaning is there for me? And so I tried it. I said, let me see what happens when I write this, and the Alleluia. And it softened me. The whole process really softened me.
We have time for just one more question. Yeah, just the lady in the second row there.
Hello. So you've written lots of different kinds of music, so for like musicals, films or anything. Do you have a preference, and is there going to be another virtual choir in the future?
There will definitely be another virtual choir. We're looking for something special. Yeah, and all of you singers, I'm hoping you join. You must join. I don't want to keep repeating the same thing over and over, so I'm looking for something truly special and interesting. As for a favorite kind of music to write, I like writing funny music. There's Animal Crackers. I wrote this piece called Godzilla Eats Las Vegas that we just performed the orchestra and chorus version with Minnesota a couple of weeks ago. It's just ridiculous. And I think I like it because comedy, especially in music, it's a zero-sum game. It's either funny or it's not. You live or you die, right? It's so pure. And there's nothing worse than doing something you think is funny and no one in the audience laughs, right? It's just, that's the death. But if you can construct something, if you can construct a joke that has a setup and coherence and then a payoff, and you get a laugh from the audience, that is manna from heaven. I will pursue that until the day I die. So that's probably the most fun. Guys, thank you very, very much.